Hello, I'm Lowell, and welcome to another episode of the Open Hearth podcast. This show draws on the experience and play of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. We're an online TTRPG gaming group which plays many kinds of games and many kinds of gaming, story games, OSR, solo, and more. Just so you know, we have mandatory use of safety tools for all play in the community, and all of that's supported by a special calendar app, and we have our Discord. So, as usual for this podcast, we brought on a pair of community members here to talk about their gaming. With me is Rich Rogers, creator of the Plus One Forward podcast and designer of Hit the Streets, Defend the Block. Rich, thank you for being with us again.
Always a pleasure. Love to be on the mics with you, Lowell.
Yeah. And Jay Brown from the Diceology podcast, Play.Fearless, designer of Lifted, Indomitable, and a number of other things. Thank you for being with us, Jay.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. I enjoy it.
Awesome. For our first segment, we have everyone tell us about how their recent games have gone, and then talk with us a little more about something in particular that they've played, read, or watched. So, Rich, tell us about your recent gaming.
Thanks, Lowell. For Open Hearth, I just finished up a series of Hyperspace D6 last month. That is a hack using the Open D6 license to simplify the original Star Wars D6 Weston Games role-playing game. And I used it to try to shed off all of these are modules for old Star Wars D6 that I really want to play in some context. I got through that. I feel like now at this point, all of the modules of Weston games that I wanted to run, I have run. And the ones that still intrigue me are far too opaque for me to go. So it's amazing to put this thing in a box and say, I think I'm done with that part of my gaming history. So that was fun. I just kicked off a series of Rapscallion, which I've hacked for Star Wars. And by hacked, I mean not very well, but that's what I'm doing. Rapscallion's a game that I said, hey, it's Magpie, it's pirates. I just watched Skeleton Crew. So Pirates in Star Wars works. I'll just run this sight unseen, not having read it at all.
Oof.
That was, it turns out, a poor choice because Rapscallion has a lot more within its DNA that is it's a piratical game, it's a fantasy pirates, very Pirates of the Caribbean / One Piece. And there's just so much built in the DNA of the game that is very setting focused that the amount of reskinning that I have needed to do has been much more than I thought. And also, I hacked the character keeper that Alan Reese, amazing member of the community, had created, and I hacked it poorly. So our first session 0 was fixing references in a Google sheet. And if you think that's exciting, you're right. Wow, was it exciting. I don't know if I ever apologized that many times in a 2-hour period. But that's what it was. Luckily, though, Open Hearth, incredibly giving players, very understanding, and also I've run actually good games for them so I have it in that bank of I'm gonna withdraw from the bank all of the effort I put forth in good games so that you will have faith in me and not walk away or have a problem with Zoom and just disconnect. So they stuck through it. We're 2 sessions in now, and starting to hit our groove, and that's been really fun. I think it's a cool game. I just don't know if I should have run in Star Wars. Also running Capes in the Dark for my MCU Sundays series. It wraps this month. We've just got a couple more sessions left of it. That's a Forged in the Dark game for supers. It's quite good, but there's a heft to it that I can't quite get to in a month-and-a-half series. It's Forged in the Dark. It's made for campaigns, and so there are bells and whistles that we haven't been able to blow a whistle and ring a bell. We haven't quite gotten to those, but it still does the day-to-day, and the characters are really interesting and fun as well. Outside of the Open Hearth, my wife asked if we could resume our Scum and Villainy game and that we put on pause last year, so I'm looking through old notes and prepping for that. And then with my home game, I just finished the 3rd season. I say season because it's probably more like 5 seasons, but I call it a season because we've reached the point of Masks, which is the game, where I say, okay, you guys have too many advancements. either we move to another game or you choose new playbooks. And this will be the third time that they're like, no, we want to keep playing these characters, so they're going to choose new playbooks. But
That is wild to me.
I
That
don't
is wild.
understand it.
That is wild.
As a GM player who loves playing lots of different games and participates in the Ladder of Insanity, where I try to get 10 different RPGs, 10 plays each, having this home group that is like, no, we just want to keep playing this one game is an anathema to me anymore. It's so weird. I feel guilty for going, but seriously, there are other games, guys. There's like other games. The thing is that I jokingly refer to it as the Masks anthology because I've made them play other games with other characters in this X-Men Academy setting. So I'm like, okay, now you're playing the Gen X group, and we're using Hit the Streets. And now we're playing these 4 characters, and I'm using Troll Babe, Hacked to Mutant Babe. And so we do play other games, but it's like always around this one huge arcing story that's become a mess. But now we're doing a side story between the seasons of Marvel Heroic, which I will be talking about in what's giving me life. On the play-by-post front, we're a few months into an Apocalypse World game that I'm running for my good buddy Heidi, and I'm running a Monster of the Week game for some friends over the summer. There's like a dad chat of guys who all happen to be free for the summer, so I'm doing a play-by-post for them. And then the Masks game actually has a play-by-post half. So between live sessions, they play sides like scenes of these characters in conversations with various NPCs or each other. And that is kind of on pause, but also a bunch of flashbacks until the Marvel Heroic happens. So the game I actually want to talk about is the other week game that is not a play-by-post. It's run by Jesse Ross, also a member of the Open Hearth, creator of Trophy Dark and a number of other games. He is running Smallville. That's a superhero-themed RPG published in 2010 from Margaret Weiss Productions, set in the universe of the TV series Smallville. It's out of print. Used book copies are crazy expensive, like hundreds of dollars. PDF is not available for purchase either. It's an early Cortex RPG, and I'm looking at Jay, who's nodding like, Cortex, yep, baby, that's his jam. And designed by Cam Banks and Miriam Roburn. So, points about the game that I find interesting. And there's some aspects of this game that I haven't seen in future Cortex games from that point, which I find fascinating. So, Smallville has this focus on being an episodic RPG, and it does it in mechanisms that fascinate me. So, first of all, it's a die pool system where you're building your dice from several different places on your character sheet. My main critique of the game is that some things are named one thing, but it's actually this thing, but it's another thing. So there's some terminology cleanup that we've had to set our minds to. No, that's an asset and a location. Is that a dessert topping or a floor wax? It's both. It's a dessert topping and a floor wax. There are values which have dice. There are relationships which have dice. And one of the fun parts of the game is that you can challenge the statement that you've written about your value or your relationship. And you're encouraged to write these beliefs, in quotes, so that they're very strong, such as, I can always count on so-and-so, or you pigeonhole a character, or you say a thing about one of your values, such as love. Love is always painful. And then you write it strong so that if you're in a situation, you can say, you know what, this could change the way that my character thinks about this aspect of their personality or their relationship. And then you get more dice for it, which is exciting. And you get to win at things. So challenging is really, really fun. And it also contributes to another interesting part of the game, which is your growth pool. And I say interesting, but I put it in a caveat because that's one of the things we've hacked. But at the end of the game, you have growth pool, which comes from getting stress, challenging things, and then you have a bunch of dice, and you roll it against the GM. And if you roll well, then you get the chance to move some things up. And if you don't roll well, then you don't get to move things up, but you can trade out stuff. And that's the hack thing, because it doesn't feel great to bust your hump to try to get a bunch of growth pool. And then the GM, darn you, Jesse, rolls a 12 on one of his dice. And I'm like, well, crap, I can't beat that. So you get nothing for it. So we've changed that. Jesse's, bless his soul, went into a bunch of the Cortex fora and looked at the Cortex Prime handbook and found some options. And we're going with a different growth pool. And it's way better. Like, I like it a lot better. It was super frustrating. It became a disincentive at times. But that episodic play that I mentioned, the way that the mechanisms work is that you start the game with none of this economy called plot points. You start with a certain number of them. And if you end the session with a bajillion plot points, you don't get to carry it over. Sorry, you should have spent it. You should have spent those plot points as they were. So I have at least 2 sessions. I have wealthy as a thing about my character, and you can spend a plot point to introduce that you bought something. So at the end of the session, I'm like, well, it turns out that I bought all of the coffee shops. It turns out that I have bought us a headquarters because I have these plot points and I must spend them. Also, and this is maybe my single most favorite thing and why I'm going to run Marvel Heroic, the GM has a kind of budget called trouble in Smallville. You start off with 2d6. As the game proceeds, if anyone of the players rolls their dice pool and gets a 1 on that die result, whether it's a d4 all the way up to a d12, the Watchtower, which is the name for the GM because Cam Banks can't help but come up with new names for GMs, you have this unlimited kitty of plot points. I think of it like the banker in Monopoly, and you can say, I'll buy that. And you give a plot point to the player, which is great because plot points are fun and you can do cool things and activate powers and the like. You then buy that die from them. And let's say that they rolled a d8 and rolled a 1 on that d8. You give them a plot point. You get that d8. You now can add that to your 2d6. Now, you might think, well, okay, 4s roll a lot of 1s. Why would I even care? The Watchtower can take that plot point, buy that d4, and upgrade or step up one of the d6s. So you watch as the game goes on, and lots of 1s happen. Plot points will move out from the giant kitty. And I look at this little trouble pool that Jesse has on one certain part of the table, and I see it goes from 2d6 to 2d6 and a d8, and now the d8's a d10, and these d6s become d8s, and everything keeps stepping up and getting larger and bigger. And it's so exciting to see, oh man, I whatever happens next, Watchtower is rolling with 2d12 and 3d6s. Holy crap. So there's this escalating danger that happens the more 1s that you have. It's this growing threat. And then it's episodic. So at the end of the session, GM Watchtower doesn't get to carry that over. It starts at 2d6 next session. So your plot points reset and the trouble pool resets. And like, there's a part of me that wishes that there was some special rules for a cliffhanger, 2-parter, sweep kind of thing. But it does emulate episodic play in such a really cool and fun physicality way. Like, I can see those dice and know the probability of me getting hosed, and it's really fun. And so that's our Smallville experience. It's been great. We just recently went against Condiment King. No notes. Mitchell Mayo as a villain. Great. By the way, canonically, once used mustard gas, so not just a D-list super villain. So that's Smallville for us. We've had a great time with it. I'm looking forward to more.
Now, Jay, you've done a lot with Supers and Cortex. Have you played Smallville as well?
I did. I have. You can see some of the stuff that Rich talked about get changes in Cortex Prime, like the growth pool. They give you some other mods and options and stuff like that. I would say Smallville is probably one of the underrated superhero games out there. And my thought is maybe the superhero population at large, they just want powers and throwing down and fights. Where you get a lot more relationship drama in Smallville that is fantastic.
So, Rich, how would you say the balance is of, okay, this is a superhero game versus this is a drama game?
I think it's 75-25, to be honest with you. At least the way we've played it and where things are oriented, it's you use a superpower to overcome particular obstacles, but you can have huge amounts of the session that are really internecine conflicts between players, challenging each other's values, relationships being tested, that kind of stuff. So sure, a watchtower could go, nope, it's all powers all the time. I'm going to hit you hard. But if you let the game breathe, it probably is like a 3/4 of the time you're doing relationship drama, episodic TV series play stuff.
Glad you guys are playing that, and that's fantastic. You're moving on to Marvel Heroic. That's my favorite, because you'll go from your Trouble pool to the Doom pool.
Doom pool.
Yes. And my favorite part of the Doom pool is once you have 2d12s in that pool, the GM gets to shut the whole scene down. It's done. And the heroes lose. Or whatever the GM says, right?
Right.
And so you have all that tension that you were talking about with the Trouble pool, except that you also know once 2d12s are in that pool, the GM at any time can just end the whole scene. Good stuff, man.
So, Jay, tell us about your recent gaming.
Whew. I am still on my The One Ring plus the Moria game sessions. I run those live and I run those online. I run it open table West Marches style, so all the games, even though the players aren't connected, all the games are connected. And I kind of keep a book of Marzaban, the book they find in Moria, kind of the history book that the dwarves keep. So I pass that around the table, or for online to let folks kind of update that book, as long as someone from the party survives to the end of the session. If everybody dies, you don't get to update the book, right? Future tables can review, look over the book. Someone will pick up an open thread from one of the missions, and that begins that session's mission or adventure. I love the One Ring system. Moria feels like more than just a great big mega dungeon. It has set pieces in it, so it's not completely mapped out, but they give you what is probably a point map, an overview, schematic of Moria. I'm probably somewhere between 12, 16 sessions total. It's Balin. He's taken a bunch of dwarves, gone to Moria to kind of reclaim it, and we're still in year one. Everyone also at the table knows it's a doomed thing. No matter what we do in this session or however many sessions you show up for, it's a doomed expedition. So I'm still playing a lot of that. I don't see that ending anytime soon. I'm pretty sure Free League is going to knock on my door one day and ask for some money because I owe them something for all the fun I'm getting out of that.
That's not how it works. It better not be how it works. Brendan
That's
Conway
what I feel like.
doesn't know where I live. So.
I feel like that's what's going to happen. We're like, hey, Mr. Brown, you owe us some money. You didn't pay enough for these books.
I do not want microtransactions in my TTRPGs here. Let's
better step away from D&D.
You know, the live service TTRPGs.
Right? Can you imagine, man? I would have to get a new
Ooh.
hobby, right? I would have to get a new hobby. There's no way, right? We've started playing Mechton Zeta here at the house, me and my son. He's got a mech obsession, so we're going to run through a handful of mech games and play them straight. Straight, as in, as close to rules as written. We may change the setting. So for Mechton Zeta, we're using Titanfall of Xbox fame, playing in that setting. Yeah, what's fascinating for me is Mechton is an old game, and as you go through making stuff, putting things together, as an old cranky man like me, I see where I dropped the ball when I was younger, but there are also some things in there that hurt your sensibilities today. And so we talk about that. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's where our heads were 20, 30 years ago, that we today know that, wow, that's not quite right? That's a little troubling that was okay then. So we're having those conversations, but we've got a couple of sessions in. We haven't played with the mechs yet, because you get that Car Wars Lonely Fun design thing when you're building mechs. And so you kind of have two characters, your regular human character, and then your mech design. And so I want to sit down again, he and I, and build Titans as close we can with the Mechton rules without having to hack anything. And so we'll do that. I'm also playing Flying Circus, which I'll talk about in depth. That has turned out to be super, super fun and surprising to me. I'm a player in that game. I picked to play that game because of the other folks that are playing. I would not have picked up Flying Circus on my own because, again, I'm an old, cranky man. And like Under Hollow Hills, I'm like, yeah, I'm not playing a game about fairies in a circus. That seems silly. But Judd and the group that got together picked it, and I played it, and that game was fantastic. And so this is kind of the same thing where I'm learning about this game, and I would have missed out on it because I'm a cranky old man. And yeah, it's really good. Tomorrow we will start Mythic Bastion Land, which I'm super excited about. And I'll be a player in that game also. So, and I've always been a fan of the Into the Odd approach to games. It feels crunchy enough. I wouldn't call it light rules, but it gets to the quick of things so we can continue moving the game along, but there's still crunch in there. You're still rolling dice. Those dice still have heavy decision points. There's just not a lot of nothing happens, right, when the dice roll, right? So I like that. As you'll find out when I talk about Flying Circus, I can only talk about it as a player. Usually what I do is I only read the minimum amount of stuff I need to maximize my player experience. I try not to read anything else. So I'm not messing with the GM who's running the game, and so I don't mess with... I think if you've run games long enough, you can start to anticipate what the GM might do or where they might go, and you start metagaming as a player, and I don't want to do that. I want to be surprised all the time. So Flying Circus is the game I want to talk about. It is an in-depth, highly detailed, powered by the apocalypse derived role-playing game of aviation fantasy. I want to repeat that. Aviation fantasy. They go deep into aviation stuff, which is fantastic to me. It's set in a world inspired by the works of Miyazaki, and it's authored by Erica Chappell. It's a post-fantasy world still reeling from the scars of war, where independent pilots scrape out a living in rickety planes built from salvaged magic and metal. You play a pilot with baggage, literally. The game uses detailed character playbooks and even more detailed rules for designing and flying your plane. It's crunchy in the cockpit and emotionally rich on the ground. You will track your stress, you will repair your aircraft, you get to carouse with the locals, and try to outrun your past. I'm playing a playbook called The Survivor. It drew me in because it has like a chem mask, a gas mask, and he has it on, starting the game all the time, and it's a move he has. He can't take it off. So as I'm meeting the other players for the first time, I'm coming to this crew, we're having a conversation, they're talking about hiring me, I have this mask on, right? And I don't take it off. I'm talking through this mask the whole time. You for sure get penalties, right? You get some penalties on some rolls, a lot of social rolls, but the thing that's interesting to me is every time I reveal a detail about my character, I mark a progress tracker, I take a stress, and when I get 6 of those details out there, I get a new move, which makes the mask kind of a comfort item, and when I'm in a safe place, I can take the mask off. This is a long-term thing. It's not going to happen in the first or second sessions. But then, now that I have the mask off, other things could trigger it, so that I have to put the mask back on again because it's unsafe, I'm uncomfortable, and I love those 2 moves and that interplay back and forth. What I don't know is what the other playbooks look like. What do they have? And I want to sit down and do that. I want to go look at those when I get some space away from what we're playing because I want to be surprised by the other players, but I suspect they also have some mechanisms, some narrative piece like that, and that's fantastic to me. I love that. Flying Circus has one of the most interesting stress to advancement systems that I've seen in a PBTA game. After each mission, you'll run through a list of playbook-specific triggers, moments that generated stress, taking fire, getting injured, getting into a fight, having to talk to people. That's a stress trigger for me. If I have to talk to someone, I will mark stress for that. And also flying my plane. My plane generates the most amount of stress to fly. So the ersatz is 2 planes smashed together to be 1 plane. Duct tape, wire, paper clips, holding it all together. So every time I take off and fly on a mission, and that's what missions are about, you're going to fly this plane, I rack up stress like frequent flyer miles. After the mission's over, everyone's back to a safe space. You convert these stresses into XP by indulging in vices. And you can pick up new vices, you can use your old vices, drinking, brawling, movie watching, wandering the woods. You end up with this vignette of little scenes, solo or with the other characters, that reveal who these pilots are when the sky's not falling. These generate dice roll checks, and every time you get a hit, you get to remove a stress or remove a stress and convert it to an XP point. And you spend those XP points like you would in a PBTA game. But you go through this downtime cycle of converting these stresses into XPs. And again, it's just spooling out narrative when you do this. Yeah, so what I love is that the downtime is not just a filler. You've got this character growth. You've got a logistical phase where you're repairing, upgrading your kit, your airplane, community areas. The flight sim mechanics feels a lot like building cars in Car Wars and engaging, right? Not just math on the table. And the world it's deeply grounded in, like working class struggles, trauma, and the small victories of survival. If I didn't say it before, I will say it again. This is the most crunchy PBTA game that I've ever seen, and I love it. I feel like it's a love letter to folks who like aviation, community building, and the joy of lonely character designs. So I'm digging this game.
Yeah, Erica knows her stuff. She's written a bunch of supplements and a bunch of add-ons for this. I know her originally through Blackout, which is the game about civil defense in the London Blitz, which I think is dynamite, is an underrated game. And I did back Flying Circus, but wow, that's crunchy. Like in a way that I have tried to read it, I think 3 times, and each time I haven't gone, oh, I don't want to do this. I've gone, I need to put this down and come back at it again because I don't know if I'm ready to understand it.
Same.
Even the dice, she moves from 2d6 to 2d10, and I'm a math nerd, and so now you get this spread of mods of +4 to -3, where your regular PBTA game, I think it's like +3 to -2, and that's a big jump of stuff. You can do some cool things with those extra points on the end and the 2d10. And of course, you get the roll with advantage, roll with disadvantage, where you're adding a die, taking the lowest, that kind of stuff. So
you're playing this online, right?
Yeah, we're playing this on. Yeah, so we're using Miro.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the tools because there's so freaking much you have to track.
Yes. I don't know that. So Gary, my friend Gary's running this, and he set everything up in Miro. So you have all the tracking sheets for the planes, for the characters in Miro. And Miro is nice in that I can overlay dots, highlights, marks onto the sheet, and they stay with the sheet as stuff moves around. So that's nice. That works. So we can actually write on the sheets and not lose it when you zoom in, zoom out, and that kind of thing. But he's got a bunch of other things on there that I think, like there are maps that are more than just pretty pictures, right? They have some mechanical, fictional notations on it, right? So I think there's some tracking things that happen there. In addition to all the other things you track and have to do as a GM, factions, people. But again, I'm excited, right? When this game is done, I want to read through the whole book as if I'm going to run it. I want to know what the GM's doing. I want to know how deep is the rabbit hole. I'm fascinated.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to know, I like a lot of PBTA games. Can it be crunchier, right? Can it be heavier? What does that look like? And so I'm glad she put this together so I don't have to do it. I could just read what she did. And again, the details for aviation stuff. I'm like, is she a pilot, right? Does she do piloting stuff, right? Is that her jam? Yeah, it is fantastic. Fantastic in a way that's not some stuffy old professor lecturing you, right?
Mm-hmm. Certainly for me, I've always wanted to do Crimson Skies in PBTA. That's always been a white whale for me.
Yeah.
Rich, what questions do you have? I expect you looked at it trying to figure out how to do dogfights in Star Wars.
Of course. How do I make a TIE fighter? 100%. It is way more involved mechanically than I feel like I could do justice to it. So it was a game that I looked at and I keep looking at every once in a while. It's in my hopper of, games that is interesting. I have a question, Jay. It's not about Flying Circus, but about a thing you talked about. Mm-hmm. Your approach as a player to a new game. You say you don't read the game. Is that because you want to learn it in play? because if you learn it on the back end, you might find yourself frustrated by if the GM runs it different. I'm really curious. What's your main motivations for, as a player, I'm not gonna read this game if it's new to me until after playing?
Right. So, and I've done this with to some extent with Mythic Bastionland. Judd and Gary, I both trust as GMs, right? I know if they're pitching a game, they've done a deep dive on the GM side. They're ready to run this game. Or they'll say, hey, look, I'm just throwing this on the table. We're going to see what we got. What I want, if I'm going to play and I'm 100% going to bring my player a game, I will read how the mechanics work, right? I will read, in this case, just my playbook and how it interacts with the mechanics and the setting of the world. I will not read the GM section. I will not read the other player stuff. I want those things to be revealed to me as we play. I want to be surprised. That's the enjoyment I'm getting out of play. I want to be surprised by the other people bringing stuff to the game. In the Miro board, I can see the other character sheets, and in PBTA style, there's a lot of narrative stuff that has mechanical pieces to it. And so I can still be supportive and helpful by looking at their sheet, and I can see, oh, you've got this thing, and I can play to that in the game without knowing what it does mechanically.
Oh, that's great. That was a part that I had in my head, was there's a lot of PBTA is collaborative, and that's why I love it, a character keeper where you can see other people's playbooks, you can know what their triggers are and try to lean towards that as a player. So I was curious about that. So you do that. That's cool. That's cool.
So I do that. I don't want to, I'm not in isolation. I don't trust myself. I don't want to override another GM, right? A lot of it is different styles. And this is your game. If you need some help from me, you will ask me. But I will also try not to, I have a lot of my dad in me. And so I know there are probably nonverbal things. I probably have sounds and stuff like that. And I don't want any of those things to come out in a negative way. And so that means if I don't know, that I can't give off any tells or clues that I'm judging or disapproving or any of those things, right? But more than that, I want to be a player. So that's why I take that approach. And again, I think because I trust both those GMs, it's easier for me. It's a load off. I can put my player pants on and just be a player and ask player questions. Why does that work that way? How do I do this other thing? And I love that part. I love that aspect.
That's cool.
Awesome. So I'll talk about my gaming. Last night I ran Mutants and Masterminds. We got bumped by Origins and then 4th of July, and we get bumped again for Gen Con in 2 weeks. So we've had we play every couple months, unfortunately, but I'm still loving it. In the last several weeks, though, I've played a couple of sessions of Rapscallion, and I did a Session 0 for my own series of that. I did wrap our Sunken Hearts campaign after 20 sessions of that, which is my kind of changeling PBTA riff. We started an extended series of Band of Blades with Jim Crocker running. We're going to do the full campaign. This last session, we won the mission, and then we absolutely flubbed and lost like an entire squad on the secondary mission. It was a learning experience there. Also tried out a couple of different playtest games, which are ongoing. I did a session of Oh Captain, which is a For the Queen variant with captains. It's essentially the same sort of card base. It has a slightly different mechanic at the end. I kind of went in expecting it to be like pirate captains or military captains, and then ended up, we drew the card for a cheer captain. And we played it, and it was fun. It's a one-shot story game thing. I liked it. I also finished a quarterly of Star Trek Adventures on a ship. It was the second season of that. And I started a new quarterly with this one in my riff on Babylon 5 DS9 set on a space station. And we just did the first couple of sessions of that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. But the game I want to talk about is called Mythomorphosis, which I facilitated, played a one-shot of. So this is a story game and GM-less, collaborative, world-building kind of game. And in Mythomorphosis, you set up a myth, you have it broken into 5 story beats, set that up at the start, and then over the course of the turns, over the play, you move that culture forward in time and set up events that have occurred. And based on those events that occur, you change, split, and redefine the meaning of that myth within the culture. So this is very much in my wheelhouse. I love world building games. I'm a big fan of Ben Robbins games, those kinds of things. And this really appealed to me. This is the second edition of Mythomorphosis. It's by Jordy Murphy. I backed it on Kickstarter just based on the premise alone. It had another name originally, but like a couple weeks into the Kickstarter, somebody reached out and said, "We've already got a game named this, so maybe you could change
Ooh.
it," and was able to change it over to Mythomorphosis. So in play, the first thing that you do is you're going to build the culture, which means defining the genre, playing a steampunk Victoriana game, or we're playing a fantasy game, or we're playing a Wild West frontier game. Like what is our place in here? You define some aspects about the place and the scale. Like, are we doing a village that's by a haunted forest, or are we doing a country? And then you can also make up, just have as some tent poles, or maybe signposts, a better word for it, locations and character types, just to have those out there. And then you define an event in this culture and write a myth related to it. So the example to give in the book is the tale of King Arthur and the sword. Arthur is orphaned. Arthur meets Merlin. Merlin teaches him by turning him into different animals. He goes to town and sees the sword in the stone. He draws the sword out of the stone. Like, those are some beats that are in it. So you break it into those 5 steps, the myth that you come up with. And then you actually then define 3 manifestations of the myth in the culture. You define a physical one, like we know that swords are highly valued. People carry swords because, that's a representation of it. The social one about how people feel about kingship or hereditary things. And then an emotional one, maybe the reaction to magic or something. Like, you define those at the start. And then once you've got that sort of set, you begin play. As I said, you define how much time has passed, whether it's a decade or a century. You say an event that has just happened, and then we go through and modify the beat. And imagine that those 5 beats are, if we were playing at the table, it'd be 5 index cards out on the table in a row. On your turn, you can erase a beat, which obviously you were just actually literally remove a beat from the list. You can metamorphize, which means you change it. So you write something else and put it on top of that beat. You can splinter it, which means that you put a beat above or below to kind of create a new row and say, okay, this is a new group that has reworked or has a new vision of what this beat is and has changed the myth. Or you can also propagate, where you just add a whole new beat. And you can do that on both the existing row or on one of the splintered rows that you've got. We ended up doing it with Google Sheets, where I built the kind of card row in the middle. I hid some rows that we could pull up, and then we would build it in there. And then when we went to a new event, I would just copy that tab, bring it over, and so we'd have a running history. We could see the previous stages of it as we went along. And it worked pretty
That
well.
sounds
I
cool.
was
Yeah.
very happy with how that happened. After each choice, when you do erase, metamorphize, splinter, or propagate, you kind of talk about why this is happening, what's a narrative in the culture, and then you describe a manifestation in one of those 3 types, that physical, social, or emotional. You can add a new one, or you can revise an earlier one to say, okay, they used to do murals about this thing, and maybe now the murals feature this dark figure that has appeared because someone has suggested that there's some sinister plot to it. The only restriction with that is you can't do the same manifestation 2 times in a row. So if I do social, you have to do emotional or physical when it comes around to you. And then you do that through 4 generations. You do 4 stages on the timeline after you've built it. And you get this really interesting evolution of the story. You have maybe factions and different ideas about the story that pop up, and some of them get drawn back into the main story, some of them get forgotten. We ended up with a couple of different rows of the splintering. I think it's great. Like, I really enjoyed this. It echoes Microscope in terms of tracing a timeline, but with a real zoomed in approach. I love cultural evolution things, and it gives me some ideas. I did a while back a really sketchy story building game about building a Tarot for a fantasy world, and this gives me some ideas on how I might do this. The book has some comments on how you would combine this with other world building games. So there is some discussion about, particularly Microscope, how you could use this in combination with that.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate when they're aware like how people might use it. I will say there's some real heavy lifting at the start because you're kind of coming in and going, okay, let's figure out the setting and then let's figure out the myth. And I think that's the most challenging part. There are some suggestions and some examples in there. I would love some more lists and things. There are 10 actually very well written examples of cultures and stories at the back across very different scales and very different genres. So as a GM, if you want to go in and have some ideas that you could bring to the table, maybe you could modify, that would be great. But it was that like suddenly, okay, you have to make up a story and you kind of come in a little bit cold. But once you've got that, then the play is really, really easy and fun from there.
It reminds me of Primetime Adventures Third Edition
Hmm.
created a hey, you can flip a bunch of cards to pitch your series because when I was playing Primetime Adventures before that, creating a series took out like in a if you ran it a con, first of all, you're foolish. But second of all, you're going to spend
Right.
half of the session trying to create your series and everybody like arguing about it and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a cool solution. I wonder, Lowell, would pause to look at the way it's written to try to not say it wrong. Mythomorphosis.
Hmm.
Would mythomorphosis be a thing you could pitch on, say, Open Hearth and say, we're going to do this? This is like I'm pre-selecting these two parts right here, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah, the way I would say is we're going to do a fantasy, setting. Like I think you could do genre and maybe scale. I
Hmm.
would want to leave it open from there, but yeah, I think you could narrow it down. What I ended up doing was I had a list of genres and then kind of some suggested things and they looked at those and we kind of narrowed it down. But yeah, I think you could easily come in at a con, I think would want to definitely have that. Maybe have like here are your three possible things. Maybe have cards, with
Right.
colorful cards to put on the table and go,
Hmm.
which of
Hmm.
these appeal to you? I think that kind of thing could work. I would be really interested to try it with like because thought about, of course, you're here, so I thought about the Star Wars. Like, how could you like do the
Right.
like
Right.
what are the legends of the Jedi that evolved over
Ooh,
time kind of thing would be really interesting. And maybe next year at our May the 4th mini con, I'll try that.
sounds
So yeah,
delicious.
it was great. I love any kind of civ building, cultural building, legacy, life among the ruins, microscope, all of that kind of stuff.
Did you find it very different than Microscope, or were they close? Was there a lot of overlap between the two?
One of the things is I've been playing some of the microscope variants, like Union and Microscope Chronicle,
Hmm.
which actually tighten the structure of microscope. And this is like one step even more tight. And I like that. I think that those GM-less story game building games work really well when you've got a very clear structure and a very clear when it comes to me, I know what I need to do. Microscope, main microscope, you're bouncing around all over the place. But keeping it in, this is in this timeline. We've got some things to work from. We're building from there. I think it's definitely of that genre, but even stronger focus to it.
Nice. All right.
I think I know the answer to this question, but just to be clear, this is a story world building. There's no parts where you talk in funny voices and do scenes or have characters, right?
I don't do this, but yeah, they do have the rules. Hey, if you wanted to stop off to do a scene like a
Hmm.
vignette in the moment in that culture, yeah, it has some rules for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
neat.
A microscope has that too, but actually I think it actually works even better here. Like maybe you wanted to show what a manifestation actually looked like. Why maybe you'd have those character archetypes at the beginning too. So yeah, you could do your funny voices. Absolutely.
Yay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my bugaboo. I get it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I was curious.
All right, I'm going to move on to our second segment. Before we go into our next segment, let me mention other recent releases in the Around the Hearth podcast feed. First, the most recent episode of A Different Kind of a Hex covered setting and following character goals. Next, we had a new talk on running horror RPGs. We had a panel that came in and did a talk about that, so we've got that up in the feed. I also added some older panels and seminars that we've done at cons and things. I cleaned those up and put them in the feed, one on world building and one on Hearts of Wulin that I did. Of course, as at the time of recording of this, we have a bundle of holding for Hearts of Wulin that will be done by the middle of the week of the 21st. But I thought I would mention it again in case maybe that got me one more sale. We'll see. And then I also dropped in the feed, we've got the first 2 episodes of Roll for Origin, our Supers TTRPG history podcast, which is Jay and I talking about some of the earliest and soon not so earliest superhero RPGs and what we think of those.
Boy, that's a good show. Sorry, I didn't want to break into your thing to say. Keep listening to these 2 guys talk about a game in depth. It's super fun. I love Roll for Origin. Keep going.
Okay. For our second actual segment, we ask everyone to talk about something they're really digging right now. So, Rich, if it's okay, I'd like to ask you, what is giving you life?
Okay, this is going to be terrible for an audio feed, but I will try to describe the stuff. But there's some visual elements of what's giving me life. So I mentioned early on in this that Marvel Heroic RPG is giving me life. And some of it is inspired by watching Jesse run the game and the growth of the Doom pool. And Trouble pool in Smallville, Doom pool in Marvel Heroic. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if I made the dice more visible to the players? So I've created what I call a dice, and I know there's a dice throne game. I don't know what else to call it. A plateau? I don't know. I've created a thing for it. It's set in the Age of Apocalypse. So I'm now showing you my little pair of things where I could put the Doom pool dice on top. So it's slightly above the rest of the table.
Yes.
Physical stuff is what's giving me life. That's the short version I have.
It's a dice palanquin, right? Like it lifts and carries it up.
Yes, thank you. That is great. So I have like giant versions of the dice. Thank you to my wife, who is a dice goblin. So I have giant dice that I can use in the Doom pool. So when they hand me their rinky-dink little dice, I get to convert it to a bigger die and put it on the dice palanquin so that I can threaten them. I have those aforementioned plot points. Big thanks to Jesse, because Jesse had plot points for Smallville, but I thought, oh, no, I have to do more. So I've printed out special stickers and then painted the backs, and they're all pretty. So I'm showing you a few of my plot points, and I've obsessively been going through the original Age of Apocalypse comics and grabbing screen grabs so that I have little printed out character profile pics to show folks, no, you may think this is Cyclops, but this is this is Age of Apocalypse Cyclops. Do you see he only has one eye? Isn't that scarier? Whoa. And I'm just super getting into the physicality of things to hand out and taking advantage of that, being at a live table with sharing air that I don't always get when I play on. I never get online, I'd hope, because then it's not online. That's been giving me a lot of life, is just trying to figure out what are some more doodads that I can do. Also, last thing, so Fallout, the video game, is all music stopped in the 50s because of the bombs coming. So when you play the video game, you get to listen to awesome, cool 1950s music. So I was racking my brain. How can I make Age of Apocalypse like that? What music do I play to give the feel? And I realized, hey, this came out in 1995. So yes, I'm going to subject my players listening to nothing but new metal
and
grunge as the Age of Apocalypse themes and score. That's also giving me life.
Wild.
That is wild. I totally get the physicality of real life tables. I love that. Yeah, that is fantastic, man.
Jay, what is giving you life?
So mine isn't a game related thing, but that's the okay. So
anything you want.
All right. So I've been playing in a rock band with my kid, Max. He's 17. He's been playing drums since he was 6. I'm going to this school of rock kind of place every week since then. What they do is they take the different students and they create a rock band ensemble. And usually it's, they break them into two groups. So you've got like preschoolers and then like 7th, 8th grade to high schoolers. And they end up with two different bands and they end up playing like a set of 4 songs or whatever, usually 4 or 5 times out of the year. Sometimes I get asked to sub in as a guitarist. Apparently kids are into drums and vocals these days, not enough guitarists. So I've been doing that, 4 or 5 cycles. We've had iterations where there are 3 drummers and each one gets to play a song, or 3 vocalists, right? And they have to figure out how they're going to do things. But usually there's only 1 bass player, 1 guitarist. Or, like I said, they don't have a kid guitarist and I will sub in and play. 8 iterations later, I'm still the guitarist. And that school has started an adult rock band ensemble, right?
Ooh.
And so, but now they don't have a drummer, so my kid is playing drums in the adult rock band.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so and so we're in our second iteration of that. And for me, music's been a part of my life, since before high school. I played clarinet, I played low brass horns through school. By the time I get into the Air Force, I'm playing drums, percussion stuff. Guitar was always hard. There's still stuff I struggle with. But being able to play in this fashion with my kid and jam out, this has been awesome. So this cycle, we'll do our show in front of friends and family, but then we'll also go to a place that has an open mic night, just the adult band, and we'll do 2 of our strongest songs.
Oh, wow.
At open mic night. And I'm super, super excited about that. On the side, I tell them, hey, there's a band out there where there's just a guitarist and a drummer, and they're called the Black Keys. You should check them out. Because, we could be the White Keys, right? And, right, you play the drums and we could do this. Just, we don't need other people. So, and he laughs about that, but I love it. We make time for it, and it's giving me life right now. So.
That's great. Dynamite. So for me, a couple of things that are giving me life are podcasts. There are a couple that I picked up that I've really dug into recently. First is Spooky Asians Club. This is Banana Chan and Brutal Dan, and basically they look at Asian horror movies, and they look at a particular one or a particular pair of them. They talk about some other horror stuff at the beginning, and I love K and J horror. Like, that's very much my jam. And they're really fun to listen to. They do great stuff. It's really, we're subscribing to, I think there's 6 episodes in. And then the other thing is I started rereading Stephen King from the start, but just the novels, not the Bachman books, just those from the first on. And somebody recommended a podcast where essentially they did the same thing and then talked about the books afterwards. And it's called King Things. And these guys are also they talk about game design and other things on their other podcasts. And they're great. They're super, super fun to listen to. They've been doing this for years. So they have everything up through, I think, Under the Dome. But they're also covering, they cover books that I'm probably not going to read. So I listened to the episode with those like Danse Macabre and some of the short story collections and things. And really good. It's such a great thing to listen to 2 people who are very interesting and very smart, talk about something that you've read and kind of in a recent context with that. And it's great. I really love it. It's pushing me forward to keep my reading up on that. Listeners, that is our show. As a heads up, we're recording this in mid-July, but the Open Hearth will be having another Shared Hearth free RPG weekend that's happening the first weekend of October. You can find out details about that on our website. It's a free online convention with all kinds of great games being put on, so we should check that out. Rich, where can you be found? What do you want to throw to?
I'm on Blue Sky. I have the terrible name of ORKLORD. That goes back to an old D&D listserv account. And I have an Orc Lord itch store, which has my one game.
Which it should. I mean, hit the streets. It's a great game. True. You should pick that up. You won a Bamfy, didn't you?
I did. A Bamfy as well as a judge's award for an Innie.
Which is incredibly high praise.
Well, thank you.
And Jay, what about for you?
I am also on Blue Sky as Mad J, MADJY. or you can catch my newsletter, Play Fearless, on Substack.
And Jay keeps up with the various things that he's running. There's some really stuff he mentioned that Mechton. He has a really interesting write-up on that you posted. So you should check that out. For me, you can check out the other podcasts because I'm in a lot of them. So there we go. That's all I'll say.
You have an itch store too, don't you?
Oh yeah, there's an itch store that has all of the Hearts of Within things, as well as a couple of collections blog articles, plus a number of world building tools that I put up there, both there and on DriveThru. The Open Hearth podcast is a production of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. It is an online TTRPG play community that anyone can join. We have a dedicated gaming calendar app where folks can sign up for our sessions. You can join our Discord or check out openhearthgaming.com for more information on all of that. Hey, if you've enjoyed this show, consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/openhearthgaming. We are on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and the Mastodon Dice Camp. As everyone says at the end of every one of these shows, please consider rating, subscribing, reviewing, sharing our show. It really helps us out. Rich, Jay, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lowell.
And that is our show.